Since Donald Trump's return to office, there's been an ongoing debate as to whether Europe should give up NATO entirely and try to create a new European security architecture, or stick with NATO and reform it to make it less dependent on the US, mainly by boosting European defence budgets. As evidenced by last week's NATO summit, which had the tagline "A stronger Europe is a stronger NATO," most European leaders have apparently chosen the latter option. But this apparently hasn't deterred France, which has always been sceptical of NATO and has recently been building up what looks like the beginnings of a new French-led alternative, signing a number of defence agreements with individual EU countries and expanding the French-British nuclear umbrella. So in this video, we'll explain how France is quietly building a sort of European NATO and how it might work. Recent elections in Denmark, Slovenia, Bulgaria and Hungary have shaken up the state of European politics, with major new trends emerging. We dissect these elections in the latest issue of our magazine, as well as explaining what's changing in Europe. That's just one of 80 pages in the magazine, because there's more in too long than you'd expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. We'll start with some history on French-NATO relations. France has been one of NATO's 12 founding members since 1949 and hosted NATO's first permanent headquarters in Paris in the 1950s and 60s. However, from 1959 to 1969, the first president of France's newly established Fifth Republic was the former General Charles de Gaulle, a staunch nationalist who was always skeptical of the US, having viewed it as self-interested during the Second World War. In 1963, expressing doubts over the US's commitment to European security, de Gaulle said, "Nobody in the world, in particular nobody in America, can say whether, where, how, to what extent the US nuclear arms would be used to defend Europe." As such, de Gaulle's presidency marked a turning point in French-US and French-NATO relations, and under his leadership, France decided to pursue its own independent nuclear program, with France's nuclear deterrent today still entirely independent. Moreover, de Gaulle actually withdrew France from NATO's integrated command in 1966 in protest against the US's dominance in NATO. Over the following decades, France continued to participate in NATO's political structures and joint operations, while maintaining an independent military command and nuclear deterrent. After the end of the Cold War, French cooperation with NATO steadily deepened through interventions in Bosnia from 1993 to 2004 and Kosovo in 1999. And in 2009, under then-President Nicolas Sarkozy, France fully rejoined NATO's integrated military command. However, throughout this time, many French politicians and leaders remained skeptical about the US's dominance within NATO. For instance, France, along with Germany, refused to join the US invasion of Iraq in 2003, and French President Emmanuel Macron described the alliance as brain-dead in 2019. Moreover, in the past 4.5 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and especially more recently following NATO skeptic Donald Trump's return to office, Macron has essentially tried to refashion himself as a modern Charles de Gaulle, arguing repeatedly for European strategic autonomy, and that specifically the EU should take on more responsibility for Europe's security. However, most of the European leaders have apparently decided that, rather than ditching NATO entirely, they just need to spend more on defence and make NATO more European. Macron presumably isn't opposed to this, but at the same time, he has quietly started building up what looks like the beginnings of a French-led alternative. Broadly, there seem to be three main elements to this new European NATO. Number one, a nuclear umbrella. Number two, forging intra-EU defence partnerships. And number three, pushing for deeper European integration on defence. Let's take a look at these in turn. Let's start with the nuclear umbrella. In short, Macron has been pushing to increase the size of France's nuclear arsenal and deepen cooperation with the UK, Europe's only other nuclear power, to form a so-called nuclear umbrella over Europe. For context, France has the fourth largest nuclear arsenal in the world, with an estimated 290 warheads, while the UK has around 225, China has around 600, and the US and Russia each have over 5,000. In June 2025, France and the UK signed the Northwood Declaration, an agreement to deepen cooperation on nuclear weapons and essentially form a joint nuclear umbrella. This is a type of security guarantee where one nuclear-armed state agrees to use its nuclear weapons to defend a non-nuclear country from attack. Since the 1950s, most of Europe has been covered via NATO by the US's nuclear umbrella, but its deterrence effect has come under question since Trump's return to office. As such, in early March, Macron announced that France would pursue a new doctrine of forward deterrence, which involved nuclear cooperation with more European partners and allows for French nuclear-armed aircraft to be deployed on Allied territory. Over the past year, 8 European countries, Germany, the Netherlands, Greece, Belgium, Poland, Sweden, Denmark and the UK, have joined the French-led nuclear deterrence scheme, and France and Germany are also leading a high-level nuclear steering group to coordinate their strategies. Moving on, France's second role in creating a European NATO is building a network of bilateral defence partnerships outside the frameworks of the EU or NATO. Since 2025, France has signed bilateral defence agreements with countries including the UK, Cyprus, Ireland, Poland, Norway, Sweden and Canada. Some of these agreements are really quite substantial. The new French deal with Cyprus, for instance, allows French troops to be deployed on the island. Before this, back in 2019, France also signed a bilateral defence agreement, the Aachen Treaty, with Germany, and a defence pact with Greece in 2021. By positioning itself at the centre of this intra-European network of security partnerships, France is trying to become the nucleus of Europe's collective defence, and make sure that Europe is ready to take greater responsibility for its own security. The third element of a French-led NATO is pushing for deeper European integration on defence. This essentially means things like more joint procurement, joint defence projects, like the possible long-range air defence programme between France, Italy and Turkey that's currently being discussed, and greater interoperability between European armed forces, with Macron having called for a true European army since at least 2018. However, France has also run into problems here, with the Future Combat Air System, or FCAS, a decade-old Franco-German-led joint fighter jet programme, ultimately collapsing in June over industrial rivalries, and some EU member states like Austria, Ireland and Malta also oppose joint defence initiatives because of their neutrality. Ultimately, at the moment, NATO still exists as a functional military alliance that's unlikely to be replaced by any French-led alternative anytime soon. The aim of a French-led European NATO is, therefore, to complement rather than replace the transatlantic alliance, and to create a stronger European pillar within NATO amid uncertainty over the future of US security guarantees. Now, as you're probably aware, it's kind of impossible to avoid talking or thinking about the big players that control our world, much like the ones we've spoken about today. But it's not just the government leaders that impact our day-to-day life, it's also the big companies and how it's becoming increasingly difficult to avoid their influence. So, I bet you're wondering how you can start taking back that control, and luckily we have a simple solution for you, and it starts with your email. While it may seem insignificant, your email is extremely personal to you, and it's important to keep hold of what's yours, and thankfully, Proton Mail will help you get that control back. It's a private, secure alternative to big companies like Google, and will give you everything you need to be productive, all while keeping those pesky ads away from your inboxes. From preventing dangerous phishing attacks with their FishGuard protection feature, to protecting your identity by alerting you if your email has been sold to the dark web, Proton Mail has everything to keep you safe online. They also offer end-to-end and zero-access encryption, meaning your email truly stays private, inaccessible to advertisers, trackers, and even Proton itself. This means your email and your information stays safe and secure. No more ads, no tracking, and no profiling, giving you back the control you deserve. Making the switch doesn't have to be a hassle. Proton Mail's easy switch tool lets you move your emails and contacts from your current provider in just a few steps. You can even connect your Gmail account and receive and send messages from it directly in Proton Mail, while you transfer everything over at your own pace, so there's no pressure to switch all at once. So, start using Proton Mail for free today by using our link at proton.me/TLDR, and you'll be one step closer to a fully protected online experience, free of data exploitation.